Good evening and good night, everyone. This is update for May 3, 2022, day 69 of the war, end of the date update. As a heads up, there were very few changes on the front lines. There are small changes near Kharkiv. We will look at those. Otherwise, we're going to start, as always, with a strategic update. Russia continued attacks on Ukrainian railroad infrastructure, specifically in Lviv region, as well as in Carpathian Mountains here. So they were hitting substations that supply electricity for electric locomotives there, and several locations were hit, which will create even bigger problems with railroad infrastructure and railroad transportation. This has already created significant shortages of fuel in Ukraine. Essentially, all of the fuel goes to the Ukrainian army, and the civilian population gets pretty much almost no fuel. So that really destroys that even further puts economy into total disaster. At this point, we can safely say that the economy is pretty much non-existent in Ukraine. In addition, Russian side attacked railroad bridge here near Bilhorod-Dnistrovsky. This was the critical supply line potentially for export of Ukrainian agricultural commodities. Basically, they would go from the rest of the Ukraine. They would be transported through railroad to Romania, and then in Romania they would be loaded on the ships there for further export. So now it does look like that pass was also cut off, and in Ukraine, in the other direction towards Ukraine, Romania was supplying fuel, and specifically diesel and gasoline. So the situation is getting worse with the supply of fuel in Ukraine overall. And as we mentioned before, Ukrainian government makes the situation even worse with its short-sighted policies when they try to regulate the price of gasoline and diesel fuel in the country. In addition, there is more international news. A small country, Estonia, which is bordering Russia, now demanding some of its territories from Russia. So this is territories that used to belong to Estonia. Here you can see those. Before Estonia was occupied by the Soviet Union in 1940. So when the Soviet Union occupied Estonia, it actually annexed these territories, and they were sort of given to the Russian part of the Soviet Union. So now Estonia is preparing to demands for those territories from Russia. So in addition, Ukrainian president officially declared that the terms of the future peace agreement is full return of Ukrainian territories, which means all of these territories that currently captured plus Crimea, and that they will not accept anything else. So that really means that the peace talks are totally broken at this point, and everything is going to be resolved through the further military escalation. In addition, there is new law in Ukraine that basically allows sending all of the Ukrainian militia, which every single region has at least one Ukrainian militia brigade. So all of those militia brigades now will be sent towards the front line. Not immediately, but basically that allowed. Before, they were supposed to be staying only on the specific region territory, and they could not be moved to other regions and to the front line. Now this was removed, and apparently it also tells us about the escalation in the war and the heavy losses in Ukrainian militaries that need to be refilled from the Ukrainian militia. In addition, there is significant amount of equipment that's coming from the West, specifically 150 the howitzers from the US, M777. So we already know that 70 of those arrived to Ukraine, and they are somewhere on the front lines. And there were at least 220 Ukrainian soldiers trained to operate M777. In addition, Germany promised 7, which is very little, but nevertheless better something than nothing, 7 self-propelled howitzers, FH 2000, which are one of the most advanced ones right now. So there is definitely significant supply of weapons coming to Ukraine, which probably is the reason why Ukrainian president declared that they are essentially, breaking the peace negotiations with Russia and now demanding all of the Ukrainian territories back. So that's it for strategic. And now let's start going through the front lines, and we in a clockwise fashion, and we will start with Kharkiv, as we always do. So let's look what's going on here. There is a small, it's kind of small Ukrainian attack we discussed a couple days ago. Now we have confirmation that Ukrainian side managed to squeeze Russian troops even more. So they captured villages of Molodova and town Staryi Saltiv. So essentially, we don't know what's happening here. We assume that Russian troops left here, retreated to the eastern side of Siverskiy Donets, but we don't know. But that's kind of very realistic assumption, given what's going on here. And what is happening, we believe at this point that all of these Russian troops were either pulled completely out of here and either are stationed here on the Russian territory, or they were moved to help the Izyum bridgehead. And what is here is just third-rated screening troops from DNR, which DNR is occupying territories of Ukraine. This is Donetsk region that's occupied by Russia in 2014. And those people, basically, those are troops that consist of collaborators who want to fight on the Russian side. And they are poorly equipped. So that's why we believe that that's very possible that Ukrainian troops are slowly squeezing them out from Ukrainian territories here. So let's keep going. And now we're going to look what's going on here in the Izyum bridgehead. And there are no changes. Everything is the same, which again, as we discussed before, it makes us more and more skeptical of Russia's ability to actually do any kind of encirclement. And really, they may be able to push a little bit more here, but essentially they done. There is something as a general kind of feeling about this whole war right now, that we're approaching some kind of important moment where Russia needs to double down on this whole war, or it needs to accept the peace terms that Ukraine is demanding, which is, in our opinion, is not possible for Russia. So there's something is bound to happen, and one of the main sort of things is full-scale mobilization of the Russian troops, which we believe can only happen after formal declaration of the war. So we will see if that happens, but it does seem that this situation, that Russian side just simply does not have enough troops to do anything more. We also identified new Russian unit that operates here on Ukrainian bridgehead, Ukrainian Lyman bridgehead. This is 7 tank brigade. So it's actually, so if we remember, we identified 30th brigade here that's pushing kind of from the northeastern direction, and then from the eastern direction, or maybe even also kind of from eastern and northeastern direction, it's actually 7th tank brigade. So that's a main driving force in attack here. That was in attack on Yampil, and now in preparing to attack Lyman, town of Lyman. At the same time, on the Ukrainian side, from what we're seeing, it looks like we don't have firm confirmation, but it looks like 128th Brigade was pulled down to the Zaporizhya front line, to Gulyaipole area, and it was replaced by the units of the 79th Brigade. This is what we see. We don't know this is one scenario. Another scenario that there are units from both brigades here. So basically they all intermingled and it's a mess here. And it's totally, we would not be surprised if that's the case. So let's, again, there's no new progress here. The situation is the same from yesterday. No new changes here as well on this bridgehead. Now let's look at situation around Severodonetsk and Rubizhne. As a heads up, the same, no news here. Ukraine is holding Severodonetsk and small southern piece of Rubizhne. So there is no changes here. We don't know what the only place that's still under question is this village of Orikhovo, which still no clarity in terms of who is controlling this village. Most likely this is in Russian hands, but we don't have firm confirmation here. So let's go a little bit south from Severodonetsk. So Severodonetsk basically is there up in the north. Now we're kind of moving towards south and to another key point where there is this intense fighting happening is Popasna. Russian side is continuing assaulting Popasna in trying to capture the entire town, but there is not much progress. It's half of it, or let's say 40% of it, is in Ukrainian hands, and about 60% is in Russian hands. So there is nothing really new here. So now let's look at the situation here, straight west of Donetsk, and it's again the same situation: attacks on Avdiivka, attacks on Marinka, attacks of Novomikhailivka. So it's all also some reports of attacks around here in Novobakhmutivka. So typical situation, but no real progress for the Russian side. Let's now look actually at another important area, which is Zaporizhya front line, and specifically we're going to look at this eastern section of it where the most of the action is happening. So here what we can see is that first Ukrainian side brought 128th Brigade. We don't know exactly, as we mentioned before, it's unclear to us if it's just couple battalions or the entire 128th Brigade. But the units of it are clearly operating here. In addition, what we spotted another unit here is Azov Kyiv Regiment. So it's in a way kind of another branch of the Azov. So the most famous one is encircled in Mariupol, and that's also regiment size unit. And this is another regiment size unit from Kyiv that's also part of Azov, call it organization or whatever you call it. So what is happening here? Our read on this situation that this Ukrainian militia brigades 110 and 109 were not able to stop Russian advance towards the north, and this two units is basically kind of like firefighting team to stop Russian advance towards the north. From what we're seeing, for now they stopped this advance, and we don't see any new progress here on the Russian side. So situation kind of stabilized for now. Otherwise, in this area, it's relatively quiet, just artillery shelling, but no new attacks on the town of Orikhiv. And it's pretty much quiet here around Kaminsky. And from one of the viewers, he explained to us that it's very like a river, swampy area, so it's not very suitable place for attack. So that's the reason for that. So now let's look at the Herson Bridgehead that is being held by Russian troops, and let's see what's going on here. So as you can see, there's pretty much the same situation, no changes. And as we discussed before, right now Russia here is on strategic defensive. Their goal here is not to lose this bridgehead and to keep it in their hands. They're not talking. This is not a question about expansion of it or attacking Mykolaiv or Kryvyi Rih or even Odessa. At this point, they really need to hold it to protect this channel here that supplies fresh water to Crimea and of extreme military and economic importance for Russia. So that's all the whole goal of this bridgehead at this point. That's all that really matters. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.